Okay, there we go. Alrighty, so basically the first thing that we're going to look at is the fair use in Wikipedia here. And for that, it's basically, that's the thing around. It's basically saying, like, okay, there's all these different things. There's 4 main sections here. The purpose and character of the use, and whether it's commercial or for non-profit, the nature of the work, the portion that's used, and the effect of the thing. So basically, the purpose is basically considering, like, okay, is the thing transformative? I'll show in after I go through this that Mads, ytpmvs or YouTube music videos, otomads, and other things as well are actually transformative. But alright, the nature of the work. So that's basically saying, like, what exactly is the thing that's being used. So let's see, there was a thing here I saw earlier. I can't find it now. There was something here that I saw earlier. Let's see. And I'm doing this in one take, so okay, so the amount, though, is the huge thing to consider, because basically, if you're using more of the material, then it's bound to be less fair use. Like, right here. The less that is used, the more likely it is to be considered fair. So, although then there is the distinction that even a small percentage can be made unfavorable, because there was a thing where there was only 400 words used from a 200,000 word memoir, but it was the heart of the work right here. So, even using, what even is that? Wow, my brain is like not working. 1/5000th of the work, because it was the heart of the work, could make it so that it's not fair. But I think that for the most part, for Mads, it's not using the heart of any anime or something similar to that, so that shouldn't really have effect. Now here's the part where it's more subjective, though. The effect upon the work's value. So basically, this part is talking about how, how is this going to affect whatever's being used in the first place? So I would actually argue that Mads, YouTube music videos, and otomads, and things that are generally like that actually enhance the work, because if anything, it gets it even more exposure, because I know that for me personally, I wouldn't have even known about several anime out there had I not seen Mads about the work. So I mean, that's more exposure there already, and it can create an amazing things from that as well. Basically, it creates its own kind of form of art in a way, and you wouldn't exactly go to an art museum and be like, oh yeah, I don't like this piece of art, so now no one else can be able to enjoy it. Like, that is something really to consider. But yeah, so although this is the subjective part, honestly, because it's dependent on the person who has the copyright to determine whether it's fair use or not. And that is the really interesting part about that, because here's the thing. You can have a company that looks at things favorably for good reason, because they're usually pretty amazing, honestly, I feel like. But on the other hand, you could have other people who look at it and they're just like, well, I don't think this is great at all. And because of that, they say, oh yeah, it's not fair use, even though it like kind of is because it's transformative, but because they're considering the effect is bad, although, like I said, it increases exposure, so I'm not entirely sure how this point really works, because it does involve more subjectivity, but alright. And there are other factors as well, basically. And this part just talks about, like, oh yeah, don't plagiarize works by passing things off as your own. Nobody who has ever created a med source has ever been like, oh yeah, I created the anime myself, I've totally made this, or anything similar to that, so that is not even really a problem. So alright, now let's examine 5 different things here. At least I think it's 5. Actually, no, it looks like it's 6. Unless that's... Okay, yeah, it's 6, never mind. So basically, I'm just going to show a small portion of this, because, again, I don't want to use the whole thing, because it's honestly not my videos or anything. But I think it'll be fair to say that from the portions you'll see that this is definitely transformative, and that they cover other songs, so... Let's see... Yeah, it's lagging for some reason. Okay. So basically, this one's covering this thing called banjo, right down there even, which is actually amazing because usually that doesn't happen. But so that's pretty transformative, because there is no possible way you would be able to argue that, okay, yeah, the creators of, if I remember the name of this correctly, UBK Euphonium would randomly just come together and be like, okay, let's create this thing that is like this. So I'd argue, without a doubt, like, this is absolutely transformative. And if anyone is going to argue and be like, oh, I don't really think it's transformative, then I'm sorry, I'm going to have to flat out disagree with you there. But, okay, on to the next one. Hopefully it doesn't really lag again. Let's see. Alright, so this one is a really special one in particular, because if you try to make the argument that it doesn't take a while sometimes for people to make things like this, this person here said that it took them 15 days, 19 hours, and 19 minutes to make this. And that is a really long time for a company to just be like, oh yeah, now this thing's gone. And I mean, I've seen other examples where people have said they've worked on things for like 30 days and stuff as well to make something. So, something else to consider there. But let's start this. And hope it doesn't lag again. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that is covering, let me see. Yes, the point of no return. Which, I mean, you've already seen that is very transformative in terms of even the visuals and stuff as well for that, which is pretty amazing. Next we have this one, which is honestly a pretty peaceful one. I actually have a playlist that I've made of peaceful mads, but here we go. So let's see if we have this. Yeah, so this one is covering Inspector Gadget's Crazy Maze, and it's for that. Now this one, I already know this one is covering Sync, and it's Nichijou. So honestly, a pretty amazing one. Alright, I'll stop it there, but that is obviously transformative as well. Now we have this, which combines actually several different sources, but sounds really amazing, so let's see. Alright, and that is covering the Dark Cloud main theme. Now, this last one that I have here is a YouTube music video from a while ago. This is all the way back from 2010, believe it or not. But here we go. So that's covering I'm the Scatman from Scatman John, which was also one that was from a while ago, which makes sense. But basically, the biggest point here is that you can't go and just say, like, okay, these things aren't transformative. You also can't say these things don't take a while, because, I mean, there are many, many cases in which they do. There are some cases, I'll admit, that they don't take as long, but it still actively takes time. So the fact that they can just be removed due to copyright infringement, which, again, as covered, fair use prevents it from being struck if it's actually being transformative and if it's not using the whole thing. Like, okay, we can agree that for copyright infringement, if you're taking a show and you're just physically streaming whatever show it is, that clearly is not allowed on YouTube and shouldn't honestly exist. There are cases where people will have entire episodes on YouTube, but the point is, those are the people who are infringing copyright. It's not the people who are making mad videos. And honestly, the reason why I'm even really deciding to make this video now is because just recently a YouTuber by the name of, I believe it was Kurasita, Kurasita, it's either 64 or 69, number 2, was taken down because of apparently like copyright claims or something, which is absolutely ridiculous, because MADs do not fall under this category. I mean, they don't. They weren't going and taking the whole episode of something and just being like, okay guys, here's an entire episode of this. It's taking sources from whatever show or whatever source, honestly, and compiling them in a way that makes music, which honestly could be considered a form of art, because it's impossible for these things to exist unless somebody actually took the time and was like, okay, let's put all these things together and make it sound absolutely amazing, and sometimes add like some effects and stuff. But that is the main thing I feel like to consider. Like, don't just haphazardly attack YouTube users for using content that aren't shows, or in other cases just outright blocking the video entirely. Like, it would probably take a while for me to find, but I know for a fact that Studio Ghibli is one company, at least, that has done one thing for it, where it was, what was it? It was from their movie, The Castle in the Sky, and basically it used a couple of clips from that to compete against Heineken in terms of singing the song for that. There's a lot of them. Just type in something versus Heineken. There's a lot of them. But basically, Studio Ghibli was just like, nope, I'm not having that. And then they just outright made it impossible to view the video, which is absolutely ridiculous. Pony Cannon is yet another one that decided, like, oh, hey, this thing is using... I don't even understand their logic for this, but basically I think this is their logic. They're like, okay, this is using music that might not even apply to people in the United States for whatever reason. They're like, okay, yeah, you just can't view the video in your country because, I don't know, it doesn't really make much sense. So because of that, a MAD using that same music source was then also struck by Ponykin, because it was like, well, this uses the same music. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, considering if they figured that it was close enough to their music that it also fell under that, but yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of random things that have been going on with things like that lately, and I just thought it needed some attention to be brought up about that, as well as just trying to inform people about, like, okay, what is fair use and what isn't. So yeah, I think this will probably conclude the video. But I do think that it's just really important to consider, like, there are people who are really taking a long time, a lot of the time, in order to make these kinds of videos, and I honestly don't want, like, YouTubers to be completely deleted because of random people just disagreeing, being like, oh yeah, I don't think that this should be used like this, despite the fact that it should honestly be able to be used. But yeah, anyways, I think I'm gonna end this video here. Hopefully this was informative, and hopefully it will invokes, like, more discussions about, like, why these things are even happening. But I'm going to end this here. Alright.